Hello Patriots, welcome to the channel. You might have clicked on this video because you've probably just ran across the crazy rules for schools that Governor Beshear has declared to have kids go back to public school this next year, and you don't want to subject your kids to all of these things, and personally, I can't blame you. So we're going to be talking about a different option that you may have, and that's the option of homeschooling. Probably have a lot of questions about that, and we'll hope to answer those in this short video. It does seem that Governor Beshear is going out of his way to pretty much decimate Kentucky public schools. I mean, which is ironic when you consider what he ran on. He ran on the premise saying, I'm the teacher's friend, and I'm going to help you with your pensions. But is that what really happened? No, go back to his very first budget proposal. He'd only been governor 2 or 3 months. He proposed in February a budget that would have underfunded the Kentucky retirement system for the teachers by $83 million. But don't take my word for it. I'm putting a link in the description for this video, and that's the very words of the executive director for the Kentucky retirement system. $83 million he would have underfunded that. And then now he set out all these crazy rules for schools, which are not going to help our students. It's not going to help our school system. It's going to hurt it. So people are now looking at some alternatives. So let's talk a little bit about homeschooling. You probably have a lot of questions. What's required? How do I get started? What about socialization for my kids? How much does it cost? All these kinds of questions. Well, sit back, strap in, and hold on, because we're going to answer each one of them. Let's start off with what is required. It's actually very simple. Before the school year, you need to send what is called a letter of intent to your school district superintendent. Let them know this is the name of my student, this is the age of my student, and I will be homeschooling them. And that is all that you have to send in that letter. Some of these people are saying, hey, you got to tell me what curriculum that you're going to be using. No, you don't. That is not allowed. They aren't allowed to ask that according to Kentucky law. Do not have to answer that. All you have to say is, this is the name of my student, this is their age, and I will be homeschooling them. And that's what you need to do. Now, when you start, you have a few requirements. First of all, you have to keep what's called attendance records. You have to school them for X amount of days. I believe it's 183 right now, but don't quote me on that. And you need to keep scholarship reports, which is a fancy word for report cards. You need to keep their grades up. And you also need to teach certain things in certain subjects. So much math, so much science. And I will put a list, nice little easy to read spreadsheet, again also linked in the description for this video, that will show you the different things that you have to do. There are literally thousands upon thousands of Kentucky families that homeschool. And if they have been able to do it, then so can you. If they can turn cauliflower into pizza crust, then you can figure out how to homeschool. And you may say, well, I've never done it before. Well, none of those other thousands of families ever did it until they started doing it. So take heart, be encouraged, because it can be done. Now, the next question is, well, how do I start on this? Well, there's a few things you need to do. First thing, if you want to get started, is you need to commit to the decision. Don't go into it halfway. Be like, we're going to do this, and let's do it right. Homeschooling done right can be one of the most wonderful, fun things and family-building things that you will ever do. And then one of the first things I encourage you to do is to join a local support group. You can go to the internet and do a little search for homeschool groups in your town or in your county, and get to know some of these other homeschool parents, because you'll have a million questions and they'll be able to answer those for you. What worked for you? What didn't work for you? What have you tried? If you can't find a list of support groups in your area, then go to the website called check.org. That stands for Christian Home Educators of Kentucky. It is the first and probably still the largest homeschool support group in the state. They're the group that really fought to make homeschooling legal in Kentucky. And they have a tab on their website that talks about Kentucky support groups. And they've got all kinds of them there with the contact information. And that'll be a great resource as you have questions while you're getting started. The third thing you'll need to do is you'll need to select a curriculum. Curriculums vary widely. You can give something that's as simple as you send off for it and they send you a bunch of DVDs for the age level that you've requested. The kid watches the DVDs, fills out the papers, you send it off and somebody grades it and they let you know how they did. They can be that much to another curriculum where you get the books and you do classical as if classroom type teaching. You can get other curriculum where you use mostly the resources you can get online and from your public library. There's a million different choices. And then a lot of parents like to mix and match and say, this particular type of curriculum works for my one student, but not my other student. And maybe it works for them very well in this one subject, but I have to use a different type of curriculum for another subject. There's a million different choices. Another great thing to talk about with people in your homeschool group, then there's all kinds of online fairs, there's workshops to give you choices on what kind of curriculum that would work best for you and for your student. And then the last thing I'll encourage you to do is set a schedule and make sure that you stick to it, because that'll be really important to make sure that you get these things done. And I want to put a link also in the description that is for people getting started and they have concerns. It's a great video. Hope it'll put your mind at ease, and I hope that you'll watch that. And then there's a question, well, what about socialization? And people seem to have the idea that their kid is going to be just stuck in the four walls of your house and never get out and never talk to anybody else. Well, considering what we've been going through the last few months, that's pretty normal. But socialization is not the issue that we've been led to believe in homeschooling. One of the reasons for that is, again, you have this support group, and you and the kids go to the support group and you meet all the other families. And that's one of the great benefits of homeschooling, is when you go to versus traditional school, kids really learn to interact with people that are their grade level, their age. But in a homeschool group, you're working with people who are younger than you are, older than you are, your siblings, other families that are doing that, and it really helps them to interact quite a lot with a lot of other groups. Not only are there support groups, there's also what are called co-ops. It's when homeschool families get together and they'll have somebody teach something that maybe they're really good at. They'll have somebody say, well, I'll teach an automotive repair class. Or somebody else will say, I'll teach a biology lab because I know that. Or somebody else says, well, I'll teach a thing in typing. I know when our kids were in a homeschool support group, we live in Lexington, it was huge, hundreds and hundreds of kids in this thing, and they would have drama productions, they put on plays, they put on musicals, they have their own sports teams, many of these. So there are tremendous opportunities for homeschool families to socialize. In fact, it was so many that we had to tell our kids, listen, you've got to cut some of this stuff out because their social calendar was busy than me and their mothers. Well, let's talk also now about cost. How much is it going to cost me if I decide to homeschool? Well, that depends all upon you. If you use a curriculum that basically does everything for you, you'll spend a lot of money. If you use one where you can use the resources from your public library and from online, and maybe you do your shopping on Amazon and get some of the books used that some other kid used last year, math is still math, and you can get it. So it would vary very widely depending on which curriculum that you would like to use. But again, several helpful websites we'll have in the description, and I hope they'll be a blessing to you. Now let's talk about some of the benefits of homeschooling. One of the benefits of homeschooling is you are never going to get a better teacher-to-student ratio. This is one area the public schools cannot compete. You can't compete with one teacher to 1, 2, or 3 students. There's no way that they could do that. You'll have the greatest teacher-to-student ratio. Second, it would actually take less instruction time. Think about how much time is taken up if you're sending your kids off to regular public school, between getting them ready in the morning, having to ship them off on the bus, ship them back, and maybe in things going on during the school day, and you don't have to worry about any of that. So it's really a lot less time that can be taken up during your day, and you still can get the same amount of hours of instruction time. It's also safer, not only safer because of the virus going on, because you're just here with your family, but the questions with bullying, with drugs, with shootings, peer pressure. You ever wonder why some kid at school that's the same age as your kid has so much influence over what your kid is thinking and saying and doing, more than you do? You know the reason why is because that your kid is spending 8 hours a day or more in school with that other person. More time, more influence. This is to kind of have the influence of the family and remove that negative influence from peer pressure that is so often destructive to kids in school. Another great benefit of homeschooling is the flexibility. If you want to take vacation, you don't have to worry about scheduling that to take off with the teachers. You just go on vacation. Our family homeschooled, and we would love to take vacation in the middle of the school year when all the vacation spots are the least busy because everybody else is in school. And if you have trouble getting your kid up at 6 or 7 in the morning to get them dressed, have breakfast, and get them off to school, you know what? You don't have to get them up at 6 or 7 in the morning. If you don't want to start school till like 9:30, 10:30, start at 10:30. There's no law that says you have to do school from 8 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You can start at 10:30 and you can get done, 4 or 5, whenever you want to do. Great flexibility with homeschooling. It really allows you to go out and to do a lot more with you and your kids really in their day. And now let's talk about finally the quality of education. The quality of education is entirely up to you. I know some people complain about the public schools saying, I don't think they spend enough time on this and they spend way too much time on that. Well, now you're the one in charge of that, saying, hey, I think we should spend more time on, say, U.S. history or the Constitution, and I think we should spend less time on something else. Whatever you like, that is the beauty of homeschooling and part of that flexibility. As far as quality goes, back in 2018, there was the Kentucky General Assembly had asked for an investigation into Kentucky homeschooling. They wanted to know the status of it. So this big investigation went on for several months, and then a report was given to the Interim Joint Education Committee. And I sat in on that committee hearing. And the report came back with 3 major findings. This is one of the findings that was reported. One, they said that homeschool kids in Kentucky generally score higher on the ACT than public school kids. Finding number 2, they found that homeschool kids tend to get higher GPAs in college than public school kids. And the third finding is that homeschool kids in Kentucky tend to get better grades in dual enrollment classes than public school kids. And you should have seen some of the people in the room's faces drop. They had asked for this investigation, wanting to try to prove homeschooling's bad, and the 3 major findings said, hey, actually they do better because you can't beat that one-to-one instruction, that quality time, that being able to tailor curriculum exactly to your students' learning style. You just can't do that in a public school because you have to do it to the masses. So homeschooling is an option. One I hope that you will consider. There is about 2 million homeschool families in America right now, and that number has been rapidly growing. I imagine this coming school year, that number is going to shoot through the roof because of all kinds of parents wanting to get their kids out of this environment and put them in something that they can control a little bit more, feel a little bit safer. Hope this has been helpful for you. Don't forget to check those links in the description. And remember, you have about 3 options as far as educating your children. First of all, if you want to send them to public school, by all means, send them to public school. Kentucky has some of the absolute best public schools and public school teachers in the entire country, second to none. And by all means, if you want to send them there, feel free and do it with pride. If you say, well, I want to send them maybe over to a private school, we have some excellent private schools in Kentucky. In fact, Governor Andy Beshear used to send his kids to private school through their entire education until he started running for governor. And then he said, well, I'll take them and I'll put them into public school because I'm all about public schools. And if you want to homeschool, you now see it is maybe a little easier than you thought. There are people that will help you, and it just might be the best thing for your kids, for you, and for your entire family. Well, that's about it for this video. Make sure you hit that button to subscribe to get notified when we have the next one. And until next time, I'm Lee Watts for Patriot Point. Stand strong, Kentucky.